She was 18 and sleeping inside the storage room behind a closed laundromat. Every night the old dryer vents rattled above her head. Whenever trucks passed on the highway outside town, the room smelled like dust-soaked powder and damp cardboard. She slept on a thin camping mat with her backpack under her arm because she was afraid someone would steal the little she still owned. Her name was Nora Bellamy. 3 weeks earlier, she still had a bedroom. Not a perfect life, not even a happy one, but at least a door she could lock. Now she had $47, left 2 hoodies, a cracked phone charger, and a folded photograph of her grandmother tucked inside her wallet. Most people in the town of Dry Creek avoided the old funeral parlor at the edge of the desert road. The place had been empty for nearly 20 years. Its windows were covered in dust so thick they looked painted shut. The wooden sign out front leaned sideways like it was tired of standing wind, pushed sand across the front steps day and night. Nobody wanted it. That was why the county auction sold it for $3. $3. Nora bought it because it was the only thing on earth she could still afford. But what she did not know was the funeral parlor had been hiding something inside its walls for decades. And on her first night there, she heard knocking. Not loud, not violent, just 3 slow knocks from somewhere behind the hallway wall. Before we continue with stories like this, stay with you long after they end. Take a moment to subscribe. These stories are about lost people, forgotten places, and the strange ways life sometimes gives second chances when everything feels over. Nora grew up in a trailer outside a mining town 2 hours north of Dry Creek. Her grandfather, Walter Bellamy, repaired watches for almost 40 years. Not expensive watches, old pocket watches, railroad watches, tiny brass clocks people brought and wrapped inside handkerchiefs. His fingers always smelled faintly of machine oil and cedarwood. When Nora was little, she used to sit beside him at his workbench. While dust floated through the sunlight from the kitchen window, he would place tiny gears into her palm and say, "People think broken things are useless because they stop making noise." Then he would smile, but silence does not mean empty. Nora never forgot that. Her mother Denise worked double shifts at a roadside diner after Walter got sick bills stacked on the refrigerator door. Power shutoffs became normal. Some nights dinner was canned soup stretched with hot water. Still, her grandmother Evelyn somehow made the trailer feel warm. She baked peach bread every Sunday morning. The smell filled every room before sunrise. Even now, years later, Nora could still remember the sound of Evelyn humming softly near the oven, while old country music played through a tiny radio with bad reception. Evelyn loved forgotten things. Bent spoons, old curtains, cracked dishes from yard sales. She repaired everything carefully, patiently. You never throw something away just because it survived a hard life, she used to tell Nora. When Nora turned 14, Evelyn gave her a small silver key attached to a faded blue ribbon. "It does not open anything important," she said with a laugh. "But one day it might remind you that some doors only appear when you are ready." At the time, Nora thought it was just another strange thing her grandmother said. 3 months later, Evelyn died in her sleep during winter. The trailer never felt warm again after that. Walter stopped repairing watches. Denise became quieter every year. And Nora slowly learned how fast grief can hollow out a home. By 17, Nora spent most evenings working at a grocery store after school. She stocked shelves until midnight beneath flickering fluorescent lights while country songs echoed through cheap ceiling speakers. Sometimes she would come home and find unpaid notices spread across the kitchen table. Other times she would find her mother asleep in a chair with a television still glowing blue across the walls. Nobody talked much anymore. Then the mining company shut down. Everything collapsed after that. Her mother lost the trailer within 5 months. They moved between motels until Denise started drinking heavily. Angry silence turned into arguments. Arguments turned into slammed doors. One night during a storm, Nora came home from work and found all her clothes packed into garbage bags beside the porch steps of a rented trailer outside town. Her mother would not even look at her. "I can barely survive myself," Denise whispered through the screen door. Nora waited for her to change her mind. She never did. That night, Nora slept behind the grocery store loading dock while rainwater dripped through the metal roof above her. She cried quietly into her sleeve so nobody would hear. After that, she drifted. Bus stations, storage sheds, Cheap motels whenever she could afford one. The only thing she refused to sell was Evelyn's silver key. Sometimes late at night she rubbed her thumb across the cold metal, just to feel connected to someone who once loved her gently. Weeks later, while scrolling through county listings at the public library, Nora found the funeral parlor auction. Abandoned property, Dry Creek County. Structure unsafe. Final sale. $3 opening bid. No one else bid. Not one person. The librarian actually stared at her when she printed the receipt. "You really bought that place?" the old woman asked. Nora nodded. "Why?" Nora looked down at the paper in her hands. "Because nobody else wanted it." But she did not say that aloud. The bus dropped her outside Dry Creek just before sunset. The town looked half asleep beneath layers of desert dust. Closed gas stations, sun-faded signs, empty storefronts with cracked windows. The funeral parlor sat nearly a mile beyond town beside a narrow dirt road lined with dead brush and leaning telephone poles. As Nora approached it, wind scraped sand across the pavement in long whispering waves. The building looked smaller than she expected, and sadder. The white paint had peeled away years ago, exposing gray wood underneath. One side of the roof sagged, slightly curtains hung inside the windows like faded ghosts frozen in place. She unlocked the front door after struggling with the swollen frame for nearly a minute. The smell hit her immediately. Dry wood, dust, old paper, and something deeper underneath, something cold. The silence inside felt heavy. Not scary exactly, just watchful. Her flashlight beam drifted across old pew benches stacked against a wall, framed photographs. Still hung crooked in the hallway, a rusted standing clock near the office doorway had stopped at 2:17. Nora swallowed hard, then stepped farther inside. Floorboards creaked softly beneath her boots. Outside, the desert wind groaned against the walls. Inside, everything waited. Her first week inside the funeral parlor felt endless. There was no electricity except a weak extension cord she borrowed from a mechanic nearby. No running water. Most nights she slept wrapped in blankets inside the old office because it felt smaller and safer than the rest of the building. But strange things kept happening. Every morning, she noticed fine dust gathered beneath the hallway wallpaper, as if something behind the wall shifted during the night. The old clock in the hallway occasionally ticked once, even though it was broken. And sometimes after midnight she heard faint knocking sounds. Always 3 knocks. Slow, uneven. The first time it happened she froze completely. Knock, knock, knock. She stared toward the dark hallway for nearly 10 minutes without moving. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voices. Only silence. The next morning she searched the building carefully. Nothing. Still, the feeling stayed with her. Like the building was trying to remember something. A few days later, Nora met an older mechanic named Eli Mercer, who owned a repair garage near town. He brought her a box of canned food after hearing someone bought the funeral parlor. "You staying there alone?" he asked carefully. Nora nodded. Eli frowned toward the desert road. "Place used to belong to a man named Arthur Vale, funeral director." "Yeah, what happened to him?" Eli paused. "Vanished." That single word sat heavily between them. Vanished how? Nobody knows. Eli rubbed grease from his hands with an old rag. One day the place closed. He disappeared. Folks made up stories after that. What kind of stories? Depends who you ask. He never explained further. That night Nora explored the basement for the first time. A narrow staircase descended beneath the building into darkness thick with dust. Her flashlight trembled slightly in her hand. The basement smelled strange, like old concrete and dried flowers. Metal shelves lined the walls. Most were empty, except for cracked vases and rotting cardboard boxes. Then she found something unusual. One section of wall near the furnace looked newer than the others. Cleaner. The concrete color did not match, as if someone repaired it years later. Nora crouched beside it slowly. Her fingers brushed across the surface, and she heard it again. 3 soft knocks, this time directly beneath her hand. She jerked backward instantly. Her breathing turned shallow. The sound stopped, but now she knew something important. The knocking was not random. It came from inside the wall. For days, Nora tried convincing herself it meant nothing. Old pipes, loose wood, shifting concrete. But curiosity followed her everywhere, while sweeping the hallway, while eating canned soup, while trying to sleep, inside the wall, inside the wall, inside the wall. Eventually, she returned to the basement, carrying a hammer and flashlight. The newer concrete section stretched wider than she first realized, almost 6 feet long. Why repair only this section? Why hide it? As she inspected the edges carefully, she noticed something nearly invisible near the corner. A tiny brass keyhole. Her stomach tightened. No way. She wiped away years of dust with her sleeve. The keyhole was real, small, old-fashioned, and suddenly, Nora remembered the silver key tied with a faded blue ribbon inside her backpack. Her grandmother's key, the one Evelyn claimed opened nothing important. Hands trembling slightly, Nora ran upstairs and searched through her bag. The silver key rested exactly where she left it. Cold, worn smooth with age. She stared at it for a long moment, then returned downstairs. The basement suddenly felt colder than before. The flashlight beam shook against the walls. Nora crouched slowly beside the hidden keyhole and slid the silver key inside. It fit perfectly. For 1 second she could not breathe. Then she turned it. Deep inside the wall, something clicked. The concrete panel shifted outward less than an inch. Dust drifted into the flashlight beam like smoke. Nora pulled harder. Slowly the hidden section of wall opened inward. Behind it sat a narrow hidden room, no larger than a closet. The air inside smelled ancient. Paper, wood, time. Nora stepped forward carefully and froze. Inside the room were 6 metal lockboxes, stacked neatly against the back wall. Beside them sat an old wooden chair and a small desk covered in dust. On top of the desk rested a leather journal. Everything looked untouched. Waiting. Nora opened the first lockbox carefully. Bundles of cash. Old bills wrapped tightly with faded bank bands. Her pulse hammered instantly. The second box held silver coins. The third contained jewelry sealed inside cloth pouches. Wedding rings, gold bracelets, pocket watches, dozens of them. Nora stared silently, overwhelmed. But it was a journal that finally made her hands shake. Arthur Vala's name was written across the front. She opened it slowly. Most pages described funeral records and private thoughts. Loneliness, regret, grief from burying people for decades. Then near the final pages, Nora found a letter folded carefully between the paper. Not addressed to anyone specific. Just one sentence written across the front. For the person who finds this. Nora unfolded it carefully. The handwriting trembled slightly across the page. People leave pieces of themselves behind when they die. Sometimes families never return for them. Sometimes memories become abandoned too. I kept these valuables safe because nobody else cared enough to protect them. If you found this place, then maybe life abandoned you to use this to build something kinder than the world gave you. Nora's eyes filled instantly. At the bottom of the letter was one final line. Broken things are still worthy of care. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. Those exact words. Almost the same thing her grandfather used to say. She looked around the hidden room again, and suddenly realized something impossible. Arthur Vale had known Walter Bellamy. One of the pocket watches inside the box carried her grandfather's repair mark etched into the brass casing. Walter had repaired watches for Arthur years earlier. The connection had existed long, before Nora was born. The room felt less like an accident now, and more like a message traveling through generations. Nora did not become rich overnight. Most of the valuables legally belonged to unclaimed estate records. Eli helped her contact the county office carefully and honestly. Some items were eventually returned to surviving relatives. Others remained legally abandoned after decades. The process took nearly a year. During that time, Nora stayed inside the funeral parlor and slowly rebuilt it room by room. She repaired broken windows herself, learned plumbing from Eli, painted walls late into the night, while old music played softly through a second-hand radio. The building slowly changed. So, did she? For the first time in years, Nora stopped feeling temporary. One afternoon, while cleaning Arthur's old office, she found a photograph hidden behind a cabinet. Arthur Vale standing beside Walter Bellamy outside the funeral parlor sometime in the 1970s. Both men smiling. Dust covered the frame, but the warmth between them remained visible even after all those years. Nora cried quietly when she saw it, not from sadness, from connection, from realizing her life had not appeared from nowhere. There were invisible threads tying broken people together across time. Her grandmother, her grandfather, Arthur, even Eli, all of them leaving small pieces behind for someone else to find later. Months later, Nora reopened part of the building, not as a funeral parlor, as a restoration shop. She repaired watches, furniture, old photographs, forgotten heirlooms families almost threw away. People from nearby towns slowly started bringing damaged things to her. And every time someone apologized for how ruined an item looked, Nora smiled gently, then repeated the words she grew up hearing. Broken things are still worthy of care. 2 years after sleeping behind the laundromat, Nora stood outside the restored building during sunset. The desert wind moved softly across the road. The old funeral parlor sign was gone now. In its place hung a simple wooden one. Bellamy Restoration House. Warm light glowed through the front windows. Inside, clocks ticked softly across the walls. For the first time in a long time, the building no longer felt abandoned. Neither did she. Nora reached into her pocket and held the silver key one last time. The faded blue ribbon had nearly worn away completely, but she understood now. Her grandmother had not given her a key to unlock a room. She gave her a reason to keep searching for doors after life closed so many. Years earlier, Nora had walked into the funeral parlor, believing she was unwanted, forgotten, disposable. But hidden inside those walls was proof that abandoned things still carried value. Sometimes enormous value, sometimes enough to change a life, and sometimes enough to heal one. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe for more emotional mystery stories like this one. And in the comments, tell us about something in your life that once felt broken, but still deserved to be saved.